Watching the new Disney Plus show Obi-Wan Kenobi is like walking into a Star Wars gift shop. As you're walking in, it's as if everything you love from the movies is right there. The lightsabers, the planets, the characters. Except everything isn't there. There's something missing. Something that differentiates shifting in your seat with a snowspeeder that's barreling across a desolate, snowy landscape and passively staring down a Chewbacca Pez dispenser. Watching Obi-Wan Kenobi feels more like looking at Star Wars merchandise than watching a Star Wars film. The show assumes that what makes Star Wars is the actual things being shown. Lightsabers, Tatooine, Darth Vader, hyperspace. Of course, this is true to a large extent. If I told you Star Wars wasn't a franchise built on icons and memorabilia, I'd be lying. The problem here is that it isn't just that. The first few Star Wars movies have a tremendous amount of emphasis placed on dynamic characters, fascinating worlds, and the illusion of authenticity. Elements that aren't in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I feel are just as much a part of Star Wars as the symbols that make it so marketable. Let's do something wacky right now. Use your imagination. Imagine the first Star Wars, but without all the symbols that make that movie marketable. No lightsabers, no Tatooine, no Darth Vader, no hyperspace. Instead, what's left is the other building blocks of what makes Star Wars fun to watch. If you did that, I think you'd be left with something close to this. If these guys seem at all familiar, it's because they're the inspiration for these guys.
I've just about had enough of you. Go that way. You'll be malfunctioning within a day, you nearsighted scrap pile. And don't let me catch you following me, begging for help, because you won't get it.
The footage you saw is from The Hidden Fortress, one of George Lucas's main inspirations for Star Wars. The Hidden Fortress was directed by Akira Kurosawa, whose name you might recognize from his masterwork, Seven Samurai. Movies like The Hidden Fortress and Seven Samurai are like the flip side of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi is the Star Wars symbols but without anything meaningful to support them, the Kurosawa movies are Star Wars but without the symbols. Both of the films have many of the same characteristics as Star Wars. They've got the same grand adventure, the same simple yet profound, digestible philosophy, the same wipe transitions, the same playful characters who butt heads really often, and the same spectacular action set pieces. These Kurosawa films reminded me of Star Wars, but what Obi-Wan Kenobi reminded me most of wasn't Star Wars, but the other Disney Plus shows. In particular, the Marvel shows, with their box-checking action set-piece driven plot beats, and villains with a sad backstory as a substitute for compelling personalities. But what reminded me most of Marvel was its cinematic universe approach to telling its story. What I mean by that is its meticulous connections to those original movies and the entire universe of Star Wars beyond that. Everything in the show makes sense story-wise to connect the show to Episode 4. Almost everything. Do you think a door shutting in front of him would have stopped this Darth Vader? Anyways, now it all makes sense. It makes sense that Leia knows Obi-Wan because they had this adventure together. It makes sense that Leia joined the rebellion because she had a role model. It makes sense that Luke is playing with a toy because Obi-Wan gave it to him. But even if it all makes perfect sense, I still can't wrap my head around Obi-Wan Kenobi and Star Wars being in the same overarching story. What shatters my suspension of disbelief that this show was taking place in the same universe as Star Wars are those three fundamental and compelling elements of Star Wars that are missing in Obi-Wan Kenobi. The characters in the original Star Wars are not complex. They're not much more than classic hero's journey archetypes with broad character traits. Han Solo is the arrogant, cynical anti-hero. Leia, the practical, sassy damsel in distress, and Obi-Wan, the old, wisdom-spitting mentor. The characters' personalities are easy to pin down and clearly different. Watching any combination of characters interacting is fun, which is the product of three things: the fun external situations the characters are dropped into, charismatic actors perfectly delivering campy dialogue, and also those big, clashing character traits coming into conflict. The characters in Obi-Wan Kenobi may have clashing personalities, but they lack the broad character traits that make up an interesting Star Wars character. Instead of being archetypal, they're downright cliche. The new villain, for example, Reva, has got some elements of a great character, believable motivations, and a great performance, but in every other regard is a cliche villain, with every line of dialogue pre-written before she opens her mouth.
You go too far.
Maybe you don't go far enough. Well, let's think a little bit harder, shall we? Next time.
She doesn't have a bold personality to differentiate her from the Inquisitors around her, who are all essentially the same character whose only distinctive traits are being different levels of angry.
I will get what I deserve.
Where is he?
You are no longer required, sister.
This is the case for every new character the show introduces and every old one they bring back, who are each watered down versions of Star Wars characters, with interactions that are usually either cliche exchanges of character building dialogue.
You've no idea what the Empire is capable of.
I had a wife once.
Or an excuse for an action scene.
Hey, what are you doing back here?
Banter between characters is a staple of the original Star Wars, and is a big part of what makes those movies fun to watch.
I think you just can't bear to let a gorgeous guy like me out of your sight.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
Banter in Obi-Wan Kenobi is very rarely there. The characters' interactions would be more interesting if the characters themselves were more interesting. You know there's a problem when a trash can that emotes using beeps and boops has more personality than all the characters in Obi-Wan Kenobi combined.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
What sucks is even the titular character, who has been compelling in every previous incarnation, is dull. The last thing I would have expected from an Obi-Wan show starring Ewan McGregor is to not be excited to see Obi-Wan on screen, because Obi-Wan Kenobi is a compelling character, and Ewan McGregor is fucking phenomenal as Obi-Wan. So what went wrong? For me, what makes Obi-Wan compelling as a character is his equanimity, wisdom, and wit, and the performances of the actors that portray him. Ewan McGregor is still great at acting like Obi-Wan, but conforming to the Disney Plus template, put in the pipeline of boring plot points and boring dialogue to match, he doesn't feel like Obi-Wan. Those traits I just mentioned, especially his wit, isn't in the show. This is the only incarnation of the character where Obi-Wan isn't a cheeky son of a bitch.
Chancellor Palpatine, Sith Lords are our speciality.
Well, of course I know him. He's me.
And they call you master.
You know, when I cut you in half, I should have aimed for your neck instead.
I sense a trap.
Next move?
Spring the trap.
The Disney Plus show Obi-Wan Kenobi would probably not exist if not for the near unanimous appreciation for what most people agree is the best part of the prequels: Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. What's ironic is he isn't given the same bold personality that made him fun to watch in the show made to see just that.
Release Chuck. 316, report to control.
Much like the characters, each Star Wars location is unique and easily definable. Just like the characters interact with one another, the location interacts with the characters. Think of Luke getting attacked by a Wampa and then almost freezing to death, or our heroes almost getting smushed by the trash compactor. There's usually a good reason for the characters being wherever they are. Tatooine is the desert planet because that's what works for the story. It's the perfect starting point for Luke. The most extreme deadbeat hometown that Luke needs to escape from to fulfill his destiny. The reasoning doesn't need to be deep and character driven, as long as it's plausible. Think of Hoth, which is a desolate snow planet because the rebels are supposed to be hiding somewhere remote. The planets in Obi-Wan function like interchangeable backdrops. Other than Tatooine and Alderaan, the characters have no real reason beyond the uninspired surface level plot to be in whatever place they are in particular, so you could swap out locations easily and the story would be exactly the same. Here are the reasons why the characters are where they are. A. Obi-Wan needs to save Leia from here. B. Obi-Wan and Leia are meeting up with the rebels here. C. Cool lightsaber battle, woo! When the setting is solely determined by the rinse and repeat cycle of the Disney Plus adventure plot, each location is made boring. They're downright cliche, watered down versions of Star Wars characters, interchangeable backdrops. An easy way to rationalize its unengaging characters and setting is by pointing to the show's target audience. I'm guessing the target demographic for the Obi-Wan show is kids, but this isn't a good argument for poor quality because just because you can feed your kids shit doesn't mean you should. And also, the demographic for the original Star Wars is universal. There is no age requirement to enjoy Star Wars. The original Star Wars movies appeal to the largest demographic possible by making the characters and locations unique and easy to pin down, and telling a fundamental human story. If the goal while making Obi-Wan Kenobi was to appeal to kids, then great. Kids will love it now, then rewatch it in 10 years and be disappointed. But if the goal really was to appeal to the largest demographic possible, the ways in which they try to accomplish that is by putting recognizable Star Wars symbols in the skin of another Disney Plus action show where every episode is filler. The world of the original Star Wars looks real. When I say it looks real, I don't mean to say that it always looks photorealistic, but it always sells the illusion that it's taking place in its own reality. One that's tangible, like if you reach your hand into the screen, you could actually touch Darth Vader's mask. The sets and props look real because they are real. The technological limitations of the time and thousands of hours of labor made for these beautiful looking props and ingenuous visual effects. Obi-Wan Kenobi suffers from not being subject to the budget limits of the first Star Wars. I'm not sure how much CG was incorporated into the show. I actually can't make the distinction between what's real or fake because the frame looks so polished to the point that everything looks like it's CG. In Obi-Wan Kenobi, spaceships land with the precision of an algorithm. We float through the air with these lifeless CG drone establishing shots, and Darth Vader is as sleek, shiny, and digital looking as a product in an Apple commercial. These are all elements that break the illusion of an authentic world. There are no risks. It's a show that feels like it was made by a focus group rather than a couple of guys doing what they loved in a studio. Now that it's become a worldwide brand, it's easy to lose focus of how many bold and weird creative decisions went into Star Wars, and how much those feed into making those films exciting and fun to live through. Obi-Wan Kenobi doesn't feel like Star Wars because it doesn't have the most entertaining parts of Star Wars. Star Wars from a distance seems to only be these symbols, but the actual content of the first few Star Wars movies are driven by, among many other things, their characters, worlds, and authenticity. Since George Lucas sold the Star Wars rights to Disney in 2012, the company has released 5 feature films and 13 seasons of television under the Star Wars name. In the next few years, those numbers are going to skyrocket. And if the output is so high, I'm hoping they have the balls to give one of them the ingredients that made the first Star Wars so charming. I know that there is a Disney executive watching this right now, so just in case you need some ideas, what I think Star Wars needs is more stories told through singular visions. The best parts of Disney Star Wars emerged from the visions of the directors they put in charge. Whether it's Gareth Edwards' seamless incorporation of visual effects and big spectacle-filled set pieces in Rogue One, or Rian Johnson's playful subversion of expectations in The Last Jedi. There are so many directors that can make something great out of Star Wars. It makes me sad to see how George Lucas's vision has been taken out of Star Wars. But if we can get someone else who can take the franchise in territory as bold and creative a direction as Lucas did with the first Star Wars, while keeping in mind what made those first movies so engaging, well then Star Wars would feel a lot more like Star Wars.
We'll have no more of this Obi-Wan Kenobi gibberish.